Hello and welcome to the Successful Mentalist podcast. If this is the first time of you guys listening to the podcast, my name's Ashley Green and I'm joined by the amazing co-host that is...
Aidan O'Sullivan. Woo!
Woo.
Yeah, that self-intro because, again, the continuity didn't last. If you listened last week, you'll know that the theme tune was back, and then the week before that, it was good. Anyway, moving on, because today we have a fantastic episode. And we say this an awful lot about the podcast and on the podcast. Like, oh, this might be the best episode yet. Oh, this is the best episode yet. But I'm going to be completely honest and say that this is the best episode yet. And we say it a lot, but we mean it, because today we've got a very, very special guest for you. You'll have guessed this by the title. It's none other than the incredible Ken Dyne. And Ken is a really great thinker. And he was with us on TSM Live. And I said then that there is very few performers that are so switched on in terms of the performance and the business. And one thing about Ken that's really, really interesting is that loads of people know him for the business stuff. They know him as the guy that's the email marketing guy. He does the email marketing show with him and Rob Temple. But that's how people see it. But we know that his knowledge in the world of stagecraft is far beyond that. And in this episode, we actually explored that. And I'll be honest, the stuff that Ken shared in this not only allowed me to see the things that everyone speaks about so much in terms of making sure that your routines flow and all of your structure is good and all of this stuff that we somehow say but never address. Ken has managed to turn this into simple processes that are easily defined, that you can take away and apply straight away. This has genuinely changed the direction of my mentalism for the long run, I think. So yeah, I'm amazed. I absolutely love it. What were your thoughts on this, Ashley?
All of that and more. Like, God, honestly, it's fantastic. It's so easy to understand. Everything that Ken says here, it's laid out in such a way which you guys are going to just be able to absorb it. And I know you're going to want to listen to this time and time again. But with this one, I'd recommend getting a notepad and pen, because you want to make some serious notes with this, because the information that's about to be shared, this is going to be a game changer and change the way that you do your shows. But without further ado, I think we should crack straight on with the meat of the content. Like I said, if this is the first time of you listening to our awesome podcast, do remember, click the subscribe button, share it with your friends. But let's get on and introduce the wonderful Ken Dyne.
Hello and welcome to this incredible episode of the Successful Mentalist podcast. Today we are joined by a fantastic guest. Now, this guest really needs no introduction, but the introduction I'm going to give this guy is not only does he have the most incredible hair, but he is the only performer whose lecture I've been able to witness, whose audience member has shaved his head. That was an absolute miracle. I loved that moment, but please welcome the wonderful Ken.
Hello. Hi. Yes, the head shaving man. The head shaving man. That was a treat, wasn't it?
It was certainly an interesting one to the old convention and the lecture. We was watching it back and we was like, everyone was there, so captivating. There was this one guy with a razor just for some unbeknown reason, he decided to whip that out mid-lecture. So what a strange one.
It was fun. It was fun. But hey, you know, multitasking, mentalism with one hand, shaving your head with the other.
Sounds like the
we go. Don't really know how to weave into a podcast from there, but let's try and swing it back. So we've got you here. Obviously, you've done some incredible things. And just for our audience, obviously, 90% of people will probably know you by now. But for the other 10% who might not have seen you or might have just seen the name on the internet, can you give us a quick rundown of who you are, what you do, and some of the incredible things as well that you also run?
Oh, God. What do I do? Well, I don't do any gigs right now, which like many of us, I don't do any gigs. I'm one of the few. I don't know if I'm one of the few. I'm one of the people who has decided that virtual gigs are not for me. So basically, I've spent last 18 years, apart from a year blip during COVID-19 that I didn't do gigs, but 18 years doing shows only at corporate events, pretty much. And I do a stand-up comedy mentalism act. And what else do I do? Yeah, and I also coach other entertainers on how to do more of the gigs that they want, and get more respect from their friends, family, and other people who think they don't really have a real job. So that's what I really help people do by helping them increase their prices and stop the peaks and troughs and all those lulls that I think many people suffer from in their entertainment business. So I've been doing that through my program, Entrepreneur Performers in a Circle, for the past 4 or 5 years, I think. So yeah, that's been really rewarding. It's my real passion project. But yeah, that's my thing. And yeah, so apart from that, literally the way that I actually make my living is, or have made my living, has been from performing, as doing stand-up. I'm going to use the word comedy, but I don't know if it's truly comedy, but stand-up, light-hearted mentalism shenanigans.
Shenanigans, what a word. What a word. Well, this is really interesting because we've obviously got you here today. We want to pick your brains in terms of show structure, actually structuring shows, because this is the big problem. And we've had a couple of people asking us questions in terms of, oh, how do I structure a show in a way that my audience actually gives a damn? And obviously, if you've been doing this for 18 years at various different events and things, I'm sure there's been a lot of different lessons and things learned from you as a result of just doing and trying these different things.
Yeah, there has. And I think all of this has mostly been, well, all of it has been learned from just getting it wrong lots of times, going on stage, losing the audience's attention, the people at the back of the room. If you've got even a room of like just 500 people, if they're sat around circular tables, that's 4 or 5 tables deep. And the people at the far back left and right corners, if they can't quite see you, or they're not fully engaged because they think you can't see them, which we'll get into how we've solved that, they start to chat. And what happens is they start to chat, and it all starts off with, oh, just pass me that glass of, I'll just refill my, do you want anything from the bar, Dave? Do you want anything from the, and then somebody else goes, oh, actually, yeah, get me the, and then the table in front of them can't hear. So they go, oh, actually, hey, would you go to the bar for me, Sandra? And then the table in front, and then before you know it, everyone's placing orders and doing different things. And now they can't hear. So they start their own conversations. And now you've lost the room. And that has definitely happened to me many times, and it is still the number one fear I walk on stage with every single night. The idea of losing the audience, and not at all, because once you've lost them, it's very difficult to regain them in a way that you don't come across as anything professional, anything good, anything of credibility whatsoever. So structuring our shows, and it really does come down to 2 things. One of them is structuring your show. And that is to do with how you structure your show in a way that gets their attention at the beginning, earns their respect and maintained attention for the rest of the show. And then, of course, the things you do along the way to change what the way you interact with people, the pace of things, and a few little other tricks along the way that are beyond just the material. And I think the faster any of us can get beyond the material we're doing, not just the trick. We talk about get beyond the trick and move into presentation. And then beyond presentation, there's this other thing, which is performance craft and stage craft. And how do we use that in order to amplify the experience of what people witness and what they take home with them and what they remember about this. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to.
Okay, so what you're saying is maybe people should study in the environments they're in. For example, like these big corporate shows, they should study how it actually works on stage and maybe get acting lessons, stagecraft lessons. Would that be one step into the right direction?
I mean, it can help. I think that's, again, acting and stuff, that kind of stuff to do with how you are on stage is definitely an element, but that is still part of the content. That is still part of what's happening in the show. The other big thing is about really how you structure the show in a way. So, for example, I took a really often quoted piece of wisdom and opened my show by involving everybody in the audience. I walked on stage, got everybody to stand up and did a thing. I actually taught it in my Penguin Live lecture, which is my heads and tails routine. If you don't know it, everybody stands up, they put their hands on their head, they put their hands on their bottoms, and you spin a coin or toss a coin, and you eliminate down to one person, and you've predicted who will be left standing. So I did various things. I've done everything from psychological forces, statistical forces, people standing up, all that stuff. And the result for me was always, always, always catastrophic. Always. And the reason I think that is the same reason that I would never throw a deck of cards into the audience as my first trick. So my opening routine that I do in my show is my passed out deck, where I hand a deck of cards to 3 different people, and they each take a little peek at a card, and you read their minds and all that sort of stuff. But I don't throw the deck. And again, it all comes down to the same one thing, which is about creating and establishing the roles and the hierarchy within the room. When you walk on stage, and I don't mean this as you don't want to be like a militant, hello, I'm in charge and you will bloody well listen to me. You don't have to be that. You can be really soft and you can be your personality aside. You want to establish what I call the rules of engagement. What are the rules of engagement? Because people don't know. They've never seen an act like yours before unless they've seen you before. So they don't know how this works. And what we have to do at the beginning is we have to do things which are entertaining, which at the same time, in parallel, train the people to do the things they need to do. They don't know at the end of a trick, they're supposed to clap. They don't know that. They don't know whether to go, oh, or to go, call me mother. You know, what they don't know what to do. We have to train them. And we don't do that by going, oh, and this is the bit when you clap. You don't go out and go, PowerPoint, right, this is 7 ways to behave during a mentalism show. You know, you have to do, that was my impression of Ashley's accent, by the way. That's not how it works. We do it in the way, we do it in the things we do. And we show, don't tell. It's so important. We hear that in a lot of mentalism and magic scripting. Show, don't tell. So at the beginning of the show, my first routine always, I thought, right, okay, I'm going to walk on and I've got to engage the people at the back. So I'm going to do something that involves everyone. Great. So everybody stands up. Think of a carrot. Did everybody think of carrot? Good. Sit down. So what happens then is they all sit down. They go, as soon as you get it right, because they're impressed, they turn to the next person next to them and go, did you think of, I've only thought of this. I thought of cabbage. I thought, what did you think of? What's happened now? You've immediately lost control. You've immediately lost focus because they're all chatting to one another. That's not a great way to start a show. Go and see a professional musical, a play or anything. How do they start it? With something going on, the beginning of a film. You see James Bond at the beginning of the film. You don't see him going, oh, yeah, all right. Yeah. No, you're in the middle of the action. You're in Fast and the Furious, number 27 or whatever about to come out. The beginning of it, you're in the action. So that's what we need to do. We need to not lose control at the beginning. So I thought, okay, that doesn't work for me. And it took me way too long, 5 years to figure that out, that I can't involve everybody in the beginning of the show. I just thought, oh, maybe it's the way I'm doing it. I'll change the script. I just couldn't make it work. So I don't involve everybody at the beginning of the show. Then I thought, okay, what I'll do is I'll involve the two tables right at the very back. Somebody from the back there, stand up, think of the name of blah, 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 blah. Somebody at the back of there, think of this, blah, blah, blah. What happened now is the whole room turns its back on you. So they're all going, oh yeah, what's happening? And they turn around to have a look at the people in the back of the room. So again, you've lost control, you've lost focus, you haven't established any position for where you have authority, power, or control in the room. So the only solution that I've made work is to have everybody face forward. Now, it sounds really simple, but to keep them facing forward. So what I do is I point to 3 people who are already sitting near the very front. If it's in rows, very rarely do I perform where people are sitting in rows, but if they are, it's 3 people in the front row. So if it's a cruise ship or that kind of thing, or a theater or whatever, in rows, people on the front row. If it's the circular tables, it's the people sitting nearest the stage or the platform or the bit of the dance floor that you're performing on, because that's the reality of the situation, right? So I point to the 3 people individually, and I say, but I don't point to them all at the same time. I don't go, you, and you all step forward, because again, there's no clarity. The beginning of our show is the time when we need to be the most clear. It also is the time when we must establish the most, this control. And I don't mean overbearing. I don't want to make you think that's what it's like. It's not. So what I do is I point to one person and I make a joke about them, and I do my harshest put downy type material at the beginning of the show. And actually, then I become quite nice for the rest of the show. But the beginning, I walk on and I'm like, you, this, anything, da, 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 you know, whatever, jokes about anything they say, anything they're wearing, anything I'm thinking about, the environment, you know, ooh, you know, did you eat the soup? Yes, no wonder you look so whatever, you know, whatever. You know, you look like you're going to be sick or whatever it's going to be. So the first person, let's say, come and stand forward. And the next person, I introduce, hello, what's your name? Have you got any idea? No, step forward, you know, blah, blah, blah. Third person, the same thing. And then I'm going to go into the first routine, which is for me is my passed out deck. I hand the deck to each person in turn. What's happening now is this. I've established that everyone's going to be facing forward. So this is where the show's happening. I don't need to turn around. So I'm trained. And now you'll see at the beginning of this routine, because I'm doing a routine which is like 6 or 7, 8 minutes long, people start turning their chairs. Good. That means they've now realized that's where the show's happening. I don't need to be like sitting sideways. I'm going to start facing that way. The second thing that's going to happen is we've got these people in the front of the stage on the floor, and I've addressed them. You can see that because of the way that I'm behaving, I'm in control of this, so you can relax. You can relax for 3 reasons. One, you can see that I'm confident. I've obviously done this a lot, so you know that whatever happens, I can deal with it. We're all going to have a nice time together. One of the biggest reasons people heckle at comedy shows when you go to like comedy nights is because they don't believe the person's got enough confidence, material, or whatever to be entertaining. So they feel this thing of, I need to fill this void because this is horrendous. If you disprove that to begin with, then there's no reason to fill the void, and you'll reduce the number of heckles. And we'll talk about about some interesting heckles I had later, maybe. So. And I do enjoy it. I really do enjoy that and how you deal with it with your character rather than having to use heckle stopping lines. I don't use any heckle stopping lines at all. I just use my character to get out of anything. That's the whole point of the character, right? So then the other thing you're establishing, this is really important, is I do not want to bring anybody up on stage the first routine, ever, if I can help it, right? And the reason for that is I want to establish that this is the place where I'm in charge. I'm the ruler of this area. So later in the second or third routine, when you come up with me, you're not going to fanny about and do anything naughty because you realize that that's the place where I belong. That's the place where I'm wandering around and chatting to people and being, you know, a little bit harsher than the rest of the show's going to be. But you realize, okay, he's up there. That's where he's in charge. And this is all unconsciously, subconsciously. They're seeing that everyone's facing the right way. No one's getting distracted. There's no reason to disrupt. And the people in the back, as long as the pace is good and there is material, which is not just instructional material, like hold this and do that, and I've got a deck of cards here. Christ, really? Wow, my eyes, I can see them, you know. But what's nice is in the second routine, I'm going to involve the people further back. But I want the people at the back to realize they're all going to be facing forward for the rest of the routine. So that's how I begin that. So the structure of my show is always they're in the audience, near the front, I'm on stage, nobody joins me, and it's going to be a very simple process. Take this deck of cards, take a look at one, remember, and think about what that card is. That is it. And I want to make sure that there is no doubt. I want to also make sure the first routine in the show is 100% bulletproof material, which I think all material in our show should be anyway. I don't want to take any risks. I'm being paid to get it right. I'm not being paid to guess and sometimes get it right, because when it goes right, it's a miracle. I don't care. They don't care. And I think at the beginning, you want to have it bulletproof. And also you want to have it probably the most difficult to think there is a method to. Because if at this point they just go, oh, I may as well give up figuring that out. Because then for the rest of the show, they can just enjoy the show. They're not going, oh, I worked that one out. It was like a little bit of lead under his thumbnail, and he did that thing, and he just did a doodah. Then the next trick, they're trying to go, right, oh, I wonder how he's doing this then. So now they've changed their state of mind into being problem solver audience member. Don't be. I want the first routine to be resistance is futile. You know, you're not going to be able to figure this out. So if you figure out in the first one, they go, oh, yeah, how the hell's he done that? Oh, okay. And then now they're in, I can just enjoy this mode. And it actually makes the rest of your material easier to do. So that's how the beginning of the show kind of works structurally.
Love that. I love that. And then the stopping them from solving problems is such a light bulb moment for me to try and actually spend more time myself to stop that, because it's yeah. I mean, there are people that after the show that I have people come up to me and they're like, oh yeah, so and they are actively just trying to get, well, how did you do this thing? But they're still in that. So it's the key is that,
I mean, and you can't eliminate that. Anybody who says you can eliminate that thing is just not performing and not really listening to audiences, because people do want to solve problems. Like the whole point is it's impossible, and people don't. Human beings, by their very nature, the way we're hardwired in our brains is to ask questions and answer questions. That's literally how our brains work. So that old thing of like, if they're asking how, then you've not done mentalism. Bullshit. You're not doing mentalism. You're just a person who lives with his mum on the Magic Cafe. That's the answer to that.
oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. So to make sure that it's really sort of clear here, in terms of this opening, it's very much a case of like of the mindset as you going out onto stage, you're not trying to win over everyone's attention. You're not trying to do something incredible to earn everyone's attention. You're kind of presuming that you've already got their attention to a degree and you're just executing on it. Is that?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, the moment, and I hadn't really thought of it that way, Adrian, that's a bloody great point, is the moment that I stopped walking on stage and go, right, I've got to get their attention now. That means you're going in going, right, can I have your attention? No. Walk on, you've got their attention. And that brings me on to the next bit that I wanted to say, which is you have to work really closely and be really helpful to the person who's going to introduce you. Because their job, and you have to make it extremely clear, that they'll come over to you, and their job is to get everyone to shut up, be in their seat, have their attention, and applaud when you walk on. If they can do those 4 things, you can do a great show. So how do you actually do that without coming across as a diva? So what's going to happen is the person introducing you, whether that's the friend whose birthday it is, the chief executive, a professional MC, it doesn't matter. I've had all of those people do a great job, and all of those people, especially professional MCs, completely mess it up. When they come to you, they will always say, is there anything in particular you want me to say or do to bring you on? And I say, oh, and I use one of my favorite psychological tricks, which is I create an overbearing pre-frame, which is I say, oh, Ashley, do you know what? Could you do me a massive favor? And then I go and, oh my God, what's it going to be? And the thing I'm going to ask them is going to be tiny. But I create this pre-frame of, it's a bit like that old thing of saying, you know, that the guy comes home from being out and to his wife, and he says, "Oh, darling, I shot a guy. I shot him. I shot him in the face. Shot him in the face. There's blood everywhere. He's dead. He's dead. He's gone." And she goes, "What?" He goes, "No, well, I didn't shoot him. I just sort of, I may as well have shot him. I actually ran him down in the car." And she's like, "What? It was an accident." "Oh, okay. Well, actually, I didn't. I'm only kidding. I didn't shoot the car. I didn't shoot anybody at all. Anyway, I was passing the shop and I bought and there was this beautiful little dog, and I thought I would get a new dog." And she's like, "Yeah, I love dogs." Because I've created this horrendous pre-frame, right? So it uses the same psychology as that, which is, can you do me a massive favor? And the MC or whoever is going to say, right, what is it? And they're kind of going, my God, what's this massive favor going to be? And you like really play it like, can I ask you a huge, huge favor? And they're like, oh, flipping heck, what is it? And you say, look, it's really important when I go on that I've got everyone's attention. Because you do me a massive favor. Can you just make sure that before everyone goes up, before you even start introducing me, make sure everyone's been for a bathroom break. So I always insist, not in a nasty way, I always highly suggest and recommend, it'd be really good if there is always a bathroom comfort break before my show. Immediately before, regardless of what happened before it. Even if they were having dinner, which means they're getting up and going down to the bathroom all the time, I always ask them to go on and say, hey, the entertainment will be starting in 5 minutes. It's a great time to go refill your drinks, go to the bar, and go to the loo. That will save you from people doing those things during the show. So that's a really big thing. And you say, so if you could do that, that'd be great. And then when you introduce me, just make sure that everyone's back in their seats. You've got everyone's attention, make any announcements that you've got to make. And then if you could just introduce me once you've got everyone quiet, that would be amazing. And then they go, oh, that's okay. That's just my job. That's okay. They go, oh, that's fine. No, obviously, yeah, man. Yeah, I can do that because they're the MC or whatever. They're the MD or whatever. So that's one of the things that I want to do, because anytime that they have not, and you have to walk on, and you have to be like, guys, can you shut up? Like how can you be the amazing, hilarious, or even slightly amusing, or even not amusing entertainer if you started off going, shh, quiet, like it's like a school teacher. So that's another really important thing for structure. It's sort of what happens before the show. And the other thing I do is I know, and I noticed a big change when I stopped having dinner with the guests. It's interesting. I used to really want to do that because I thought, networking, I'll chat to people, it'll be great. And what it actually does is it just creates lots of awkwardness. It reduces your gravitas when you first walk on stage and you're in your suit and you're already whatever you wear, and you're ready to do the thing, and you've kind of got status. Whereas if you were the guy who was just sitting next to Tim from accounts 10 minutes ago, then you've got no gravitas at all. The other thing you've got to deal with when you have dinner with people is, oh, what do you do? And you go, oh, I'm a mind reader. Oh, don't tell them any. Oh, God, shut. And there's no conversation to be had. There's no value. Of course, I network after the show once I've created status, of course. And I even sell an additional package where I'll network afterwards, basically. So corporations pay me to hang around during the drinks thing afterwards as well as an upsell for my show. So yeah, so that's a few things that are going on there. I can't remember the question, Aidan, but I'm sure it was great.
I'll be honest, I love the way it went. Do you use an introduction, like a written introduction that you give to the MCs?
Yeah, we send one of them off. We have two different ways we do it. One of them is it basically I think now, because it all goes out in an automatic pack when somebody books. I think what's in there is a written introduction. There's two written introductions, and there's two like bios in case they want to include them in the pre-event material. So, and basically there's two of them because there's a long and a short is basically what it is. There's the like epic, maybe 400 words version, and there's the 4-line version, depending on what they want to do of each. But we also provide an intro video, which is like the credibility, wham bam, he's amazing, isn't he wonderful kind of thing, which again, so they can basically do that. Also, that pack includes my walk-on music to give to the sound and tech people, just so they've got it. And I have all of that in just a Google Drive, and I have the short link to that saved on my phone. So when you get at the event, almost every time the tech people go, yeah, they didn't send me anything. And you go, okay, don't worry. And then you can just forward to them to the tiny URL or the pretty link or whatever it's going to be. So you can easily access all of that stuff. So make it accessible. So, because all that pre-framing is really important, but it's also, I think, really important to not over aggrandize yourself. I think there's a lot of people, I see a lot in other countries where they're like, he's done this and the president said that and he's this and he's great. And I think maybe it's a British thing, but before you walk on, everyone's going, yeah, let me decide if he's any good then. So one of the things I always say to the MC is, please don't build me up too much. I'm going to go on, I'm going to just faff about for a bit and hopefully they'll like it. So my intro's not very like, ooh, he's done all these things. It's more like he's interested in these things, and it's almost like more intrigue and preamble to my skill set rather than he's done all these things. So that I find that more interesting than that.
I think that's a really fascinating tip as well. And what I love so far, that we're so far into this podcast interview and there's so much thoughts and genuine gold of just how to structure just the beginning and also what happens beforehand. And I guess it comes down to that whole thing of, if you want the rest of the show to go well, like you said, you've got to captivate people. You've got to get people on your side. And also you've got to win over people, because it boils down to the thing of, why should people care? Why should people give a damn and actually waste the next 45 minutes or spend the next 45 minutes with you?
Yeah, exactly. And then what you have to do from that point, of course, is not abuse the trust they've given in you. Because if you do a first great bit and it's all good and you've built yourself up, it's great, you then have to maintain that. And you do that through a few different things. Let's talk quickly about how to deal with how to deal with people who might want to shout out from the audience. Because the reason I want to just relate it here is because it tends to happen to me. If it's going to happen, it will happen at the very beginning because I haven't yet established that authority and that credibility and that trust, or the fact that they want to come on the journey with me. So a few different things have happened. So I've done everything. My sort of style has evolved from extremely harsh to less harsh these days. So some of the jokes I wrote and I used to do, I would just never, ever want to do. I'm like, why would I ever say that? Because I just would never do that now. Whereas now it's much more gentle. So it was an event for a company who, it was for like a bunch of schools. And there's all these like tables of school teachers and school representatives and business managers at schools and stuff like that. And I walk on stage after the MC introduces me, and it was just the person organizing the conference, so whatever she was. And I walked on, and even before I got past, so stage left was the podium where they'd all been doing their little talks, and then all the rest of the stage was empty and had my bits and pieces on it. And so I didn't even get past the podium. And this woman just shouted from the very back. So I get on, Kennedy, music's playing, music's fading down, and all I hear is the music comes down. I'm about to go and do my first line. This woman just shouts, "Do me!" from the back. And I'm like, excellent. This is great. So you've got a few different ways of dealing with this. One of them is like immediately aggressively. But the problem with immediately aggressively defending that is you come across as defensive, which means you lose control, you lose power. So what you do instead is you have to show that you don't care. You have to show you don't care. So all I did is I went from like switched on, point number one, posture, suit, I was just next to the podium. I just dropped my shoulders, leant on the podium and went, hello. Pause to think, what am I going to say? How am I going to make a meal out of this? Because what I want to now do is I want to use that. We're not going to move. We're never going to move on from that. If anybody says you need to move on from it, I think they're wasting an opportunity. And I think they're also kidding themselves because everyone's going to talk about that thing anyway, whether you talk about it or not. So why don't we use it as a thing where you actually become the star of that thing rather than the butt of that thing? So now I know when people tell the story about that thing happening, they're talking about how funny I was, even though it's all her fault. And I could have been like the butt of it. So the way that I used it in that moment was I just went, hello, which school are you embarrassing tonight? So, and then I said to her, and then she stood up and I said, no, please, Christ, don't stand up. And so again, so I'm getting like, because I know I'm just empathizing with the audience. I haven't done a single joke. All I've done here is turned on the character of, what are you doing? Everyone thinks you're a tit. What's wrong with you? You know, is what I'm thinking in my head. So, and she said, I don't know what her name was, Sarah or something. And I went, great, Sarah, the good news is you won't be involved in the show tonight. And then, so everyone gets I get another laugh. And then every time, so from my second routine, I go into the audience to like select people and get people involved. What I decided to do is in my head, create an exclusion zone around Sarah. So every time I got too close to it, I went, we're in the Sarah zone, retreat, retreat, retreat. And then I would be selecting somebody. I'd say, okay, I need somebody for this. I would look over at Sarah's. I couldn't even see because it was like there's lights in my face. I just looked over to where the voice of Sarah came from and I would go, dad. Christ, no. And then just move on. So I was getting jokes all the way through because now the recollection of that event is that was the time when Kennedy was really funny and because of what he did with Sarah, not, do you remember when Sarah shouted out with that guy, poor guy? You don't want sympathy, folks. We don't want sympathy. That's a really bad thing to evoke from an audience. Empathy's great. Sympathy, terrible. So, yeah, so that's kind of some ways to deal. And the great thing about having a character which you really, truly understand, and that just comes through doing it loads. That's why you've got to perform more often, book more gigs to get in front of more people, is so you can become more comfortable and more in depth with your character, is because you can just turn in the character. I don't have any stock lines that I use for dealing with hecklers. I just react with an emotion rather than a line. So the second part of the show is really about getting lots of people involved, because what I'm trying to create is when you go and see a comedian, if you go and see a big comedian, maybe at one of those echoey arenas, which are horrendous, but apparently people still go and watch comedy in them, because like, who doesn't want to see Michael McIntyre in an aircraft hangar? Because that's really intimate and feels good, doesn't it? But you go there, you come out and people go, oh, what was it like? You go, oh, it was so funny. Unless it was Michael McIntyre, but you go, oh, it was so funny. It was so funny. Oh, what did he? Oh, tell me one of his jokes, and you go, whoa. No, can't think. I said a thing about a fish. I think it was about a fish. Something to do with dressing as a clown. Can't remember. You can't tell them one of your jokes, but you walk away thinking that comedian's a really funny comedian, and you go, you've just got to go and see it. Not many magicians, not many mentalists, not many variety performers at all take on that same feeling. Instead, people can usually leave our shows going, oh, we did this thing where he had someone think of a card and then he told a story for 45 minutes and then he told them what their card was, or whatever trick you're doing, right? So they can tell what the tricks are. And that's really strange to me, because that's not how maybe magic's supposed to be perceived like that, but mentalism is not supposed to be. Mentalism is supposed to be about you as a performer having these incredible abilities. So what I want to do instead is make it so they can't go, oh, he did this. Instead, I want them to go, oh, I saw this mind reading. It was great. He was so funny. He did this thing. He knew what people were thinking. What did he do? I don't know. Like, he just knew what people were thinking. That's what mentalism is for me. It's just that feeling of you squeeze in as many demonstrations into the time you had together, but they aren't the 4 tricks you know. Oh, he does these. What does Aidan do? Oh, he does these 4 things. He does a thing with a what's it and a thing with that. No. So the way we do that is by having it so that it all sort of melds together rather than it being trick. So my opening routine is a standalone piece. My closing thing is a standalone piece. But in the middle, I might be doing a book test at the same time as a number revelation at the same time as so what I'm doing is I'm having somebody think of a thing, somebody else is thinking of a thing, you're thinking of a thing, and now I'll reveal that thing. So what I'm doing is I'm starting one effect in the middle of revealing another one. And that means what we end up with 2 interesting things. One is we end up in a way that the audience isn't feeling this pattern of setup, process, payoff over and over again, which is boring. Because not only is it boring, but it gives, and this is the more important part of that, is it gives them a moment at which to tune out. You've just revealed this thing. Right, before he does the next one, I'm going to pop to the thing, or quickly pass me that thing. I don't want you to have the chance to do that. I want it so that we are like crossfading like a DJ, mixing some massive tunes. Yeah, I'm cool. Into all to one thing, because I don't want there to be a beginning and end to the next thing. The second thing that it does that's really interesting is it makes it much more difficult to unpick a method, because when you're revealing something that somebody thought of from a book and somebody else thought of something that they wrote down, it's very difficult for people to look back and go, yeah, but he couldn't have done that because she didn't write it down, or whatever, because they thought of the word from the book. Or did they write that one down? No, they didn't. And it's very difficult for if you're using 3 different routines or 3 different methods. Like, I have done events where, very few weddings that I perform at, very few, like 2 a year maximum usually, is I'll usually do my passed out deck with a book test with something like a billet routine or something like that, all 3 of those things at the same time. So they're thinking of a thing, but they're all thinking of different things, but they're all using different methods, which means it's very difficult to put together what was thought of when and how that works. So you actually disguise your methods better, and you also make it more difficult for people to just tune out, because there's been no conclusion to that thing, and then the next thing's already started. Because I think a lot of us struggle to make the setup process, the thought, the thinking, the selection, what that beginning setup, interesting or entertaining. You have to do it at the beginning of the show, but if you never have to have that naked on its own, all the better, because while you've got somebody coming up on stage, that's some dead time you can be aware of, that you can go and say, oh, and while they're on their way, Julie over there, take this book and think of a word from it or something. So you can use all of that time to be getting more hits, getting more revelations into the same period of time by melding it all together.
Hey there guys, it's Aidan here from the Successful Mentalist podcast, just interrupting for a quick second to say thanks for listening. No, of course, if you have just got a few moments, bring out your phones, whack the little subscribe button on. Yep, you know, the one that says subscribe, just press that button. And again, you're going to get updates from every time that we drop a new episode. You'll get those notifications straight into your mobile device or wherever you're listening to us. And again, it'll help boost our stats and get us out to more magicians and entertainers across the world, which is exactly what we want. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to go back to the podcast now, but make sure you subscribe.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think as well, it also makes it really, really boring if it's just trick. And that's why I hate watching so many magic shows. And I think it is because, and this goes back to something that you said, why people actually go away from these comedy performances thinking, oh my gosh, they were funny, but they can't remember what they've done. But when they watch a magician, they go, oh, well, they've done this trick, this trick, this trick. Surely that's because a lot of magicians just go, oh, the tricks are really cool. I can hide behind the tricks. So the tricks are the miracle things, not me. And that's where that kind of idea comes from. And then it kind of bounces into the fact that they just think, oh, well, this trick works, this trick works, this trick works. So I just lay them in that order instead of actually creating a show and creating a nice bit of theatre.
And people often say, you know, it needs to be not a string of tricks, but not many people talk about how do you make it not a string of tricks. And one of the simplest ways, it's not simple to do, but one of the simple ways of thinking about it is to not do them linear, to have a setup for one thing. Okay, while someone's writing something down is a perfect time for you to do something else while they're doing that. So, for example, if you're doing a 2-billet routine, people will hand out the 2 billets and then say, okay, I want you to think of a flavor of something, of ice cream, and I want you to think of something else. Both write them down, and guess what's now just happened? You've created stalling time when they write stuff down. Whereas instead, if you say, hey, I want you to think of the first person you ever kissed, will you write that down on that bit of paper? Great. While he's doing that, would you please think of the name of the last thing you purchased from the supermarket? Have you got something in mind? Great. You can write that down. And now by the time you've given those instructions, the first person has finished writing down their thing. So you've now alleviated the dead time, but you've also created much more clarity. And then, of course, while someone collects those 2 billets and does whatever they need to do with them, while they collect them and bring them on the stage, you could point to somebody else and say, great, have you got and you move on to that next routine can be being set up, which means you don't end up with going to the end of a routine and going, right, for the next thing, I need someone too. Wow, those are the most boring words anybody ever said. Instead, it's like, where's the person with the scroll? Where's the person with the whatever? You've actually got interesting things to say now because you're not doing it in a linear way. And it really can be as simple as going, when is the dead time? Great. Can I drop a little bit of the pre-process from my next routine into that thing? It will make my show tighter. It increases the pace, increases momentum, increases attention. And it's much more difficult for the people at the back to disengage because they can see somebody in the middle of the room holding a thing up above their head, or they're standing on their chair, or they're doing whatever they have to do for that routine. So it solves a lot of problems by doing that really simple thing. And I've never read that in any of these books which have been written on performance for magicians, mostly because most of those books were written by people who don't perform as magicians. So this is the kind of stuff that really has taken me way too long to figure out. And I'm hoping that some people listening will go, flipping heck, I'm going to do that. And honestly, I promise you, your show will be better.
You know, it reminds me of the thing that I learned from watching Derren Brown, and it is that just because a trick has a reveal at the end doesn't mean you have to have the reveal at the end of that trick. And so what we're saying here is really looking. I mean, you gave a great example of the opening and the closing trick being standalone pieces. They should be like bulletproof, secure, because they're so important. But then everything else is where we get to sort of, I want to say play, but at the same time, it's not so much play as actually creating that experience and that journey with your audience. Would that make sense to say?
Sort of. I mean, I think what we have to do is we have to realize that I often use the analogy of like, once a car, if you've had your car break down or you've helped somebody else with a broken down car, when it comes to a halt, it takes so much more energy to get it moving again than it does to keep it moving once you've got it moving. And you don't want your audience to sort of stop moving. Oh, there's the end of the trick. Ah, good. Now pass me the drink and do the thing. And can I squeeze past and all that stuff? You want to keep the car wheels moving so that they can't disengage. And you don't have to do the hard work of getting their attention at the beginning. Because at the beginning of your show, you definitely have an unfair advantage over the rest of your show, which is they kind of want to know what's going to happen. But you don't have that trick number 3 in because they kind of know. And the other thing I think about, which I wrote a lot about in my book, is a lot of the outcomes in mentalism are implicit in the setup. Think of a word from this book. Well, I wonder what he might do at the end. Oh, flip a deck. He's told her the word she's thinking of. Wowee. Like, who cares? Well, who cares? Yes, we do care. But is it more than that? Does the word mean something? Does the book mean something? Did something else also happen at the end? Did it also happen to be a word that related to something else that we didn't see? Or was it more interesting than what you lead them to believe? Some of our favorite TV shows are the ones where at the beginning, we think it's about one thing, and then later, it's about a very different thing. In fact, if you read, there's a really good book called Storyworthy. And what he talks about in his book, Storyworthy, is he talks about a really good story. One of the elements of a really good story. I'm obsessed with stories. So one of the things about stories is the beginning should have a very different feeling to what the end's going to feel like. So if the actual story you're going to tell is tragic, the beginning should be fun and funny. That's why the beginning of those awful 2000s horror films like Scream and stuff, the beginning was like, hey, oh my God, we're having a party, it's great. And then by the end, everyone's dead. Because that creates the contrast that makes it actually feel like we've been on a journey. We started off in Funville, we ended up in Deathville. We want to be in a different place at the end of it. And so often people say, our performances, we should end in a different place to where we start. But what does that mean in a practical sense? Like, do we end physically in a different place? Some shows do end physically in a different place. Those immersive experiences, you might end up in a physically different place. But how else can they end? Oh, they end up with a sense of wonder. No, they don't. That's not a different place. They already had wonder in their life before we came along, folks. But do they end up thinking the show's about one thing when it ends up being about another thing? The trick starts off as one thing, but ends, how many times have people brought out a photo of their dead granddad holding, great granddad holding that playing card and said, well, here's a picture of him. 1, they don't believe you. 2, so what? 3, what's the emotion around that? Oh, my great grand. Have something funny that happens if the ending's going to be tragic, or have something whimsical if the end's going to be dramatic. What is the opposite of the emotion that's going to happen at the end? Is it going to be tension at the end? So far, I used to do Russian roulette live on stage with 4 Colt Magnum revolvers, right? So I didn't know Aiden didn't know that. Yeah, so I was one of the youngest people ever, I think, still to do that on stage. I was 18 years old. I did it for like 3 or 4 years. And yeah, we loaded one of them up, and the other 3 were empty. Had a big stand for them. Yeah, insane, really. I would never do it these days. It's just not appropriate. But the reason that routine never really worked for me, I realized eventually it didn't work for me. I got attention out of it. I got all that stuff out of it, publicity. And people went wow at the end and all that sort of stuff and were scared and afraid. But really, the better way to do that is if the end's going to be really tense, you want the beginning to be something fun, because that actually creates an interesting emotional journey for people, which is what stories do. So when people say we should study storytelling, what we actually should be doing is looking at how storytelling works, not necessarily to tell stories. I don't have a story about any of the tricks in my show. I don't say, oh, when I was 6, I was really good at memorizing playing cards, blah, 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 blah. I don't do any of that. It's not interesting to me or my audiences. It doesn't fit my character whatsoever. I find it boring when I watch other people do it. Instead, but the trick itself can have a story.
I'm going to be honest. You've just blown my brains there a little bit on so many elements of show construction, specifically the contrast. I never heard of things being put in that way, and it just makes complete sense. And one of the things that we tend to get wrapped in conversations about is that contrast, trying to be able to build tension and do these things, but actually seeing it, the journey, bookending it with the contrast.
It makes it so much easier to do, doesn't it? And it comes, all of this comes from asking the question of, yeah, but how do I actually do that? Like, that's a lovely idea, but how do I actually do that? You know, it's like people say, oh, you should do more gigs. And you go, yeah, I should. Oh yeah, but how do I do that? Or I want to have a better show. How do I do that? Well, the tips we share, that you guys share on this podcast are here to do that, you know? And then the other thing I think that mentalists do in terms of like show structure is they tend to go, right, and at the end, we're going to do a big prediction. Oh, yeah. That's a great idea. That's original. Now, I'm not saying we should never do a big prediction at the end. Yes, you can definitely do a big prediction at the end. But can you make it actually interesting? Is it there for a reason? Is it going to be, but then at the beginning and then this happened and that happened. You didn't see that and it's subconscious and I'm, yeah, your poor man's Darren Brown. Like, there are other ways of doing it. And one of the things I think it took me a long time to figure out, and hopefully this helps somebody, I really hope it does, is I don't think about the show in increasing impossibility. A lot of people say that your show needs to get more impossible. I don't think that's true. And the reason I don't think it's true, there's two things I think actually do work. The first thing you do, if it's the weakest thing you're going to do, why would you make the weakest thing your first impression? Why would you do that? That's insane. That's like turning over to a date and farting, isn't it? It's like going, here's the worst bits about me on your first date. Why would you do that in front of an audience? It's insane. So instead, why don't you show them your second best thing? Because you're going to show them your first best thing later, right? So on the date, you're going to show them your second best thing to begin with. You're going to put some nice clothes on. You're going to do your hair. You're going to drink some fancy tea if you're Ashley, something like that, or fancy coffee. Instead, you're going to show them your second best thing to begin with, because you're going to establish. Are you okay, Aiden? Aiden's lost it. Are you okay, Pet?
I'm sorry. You're happy there. That was too funny. I love that.
What you're going to do instead is you want to do your second best thing first, because you're going to establish credibility. You're going to establish how good this stuff's going to be. And by doing your second best thing first, it makes the next routine, the stuff in the middle, which is your third, fourth, and fifth best thing, look better, because they believe you now. They're like, wow, he's really good. And so they go, oh, he is really good, or she is really good. Now they believe you. It's a bit like, when you say something funny and then everything you say after that is just funny. It's the same thing. So, and then you're going to do your best thing. And I'm going to come to what I mean by best thing at the very end. And I always used to think that the best thing was the most impossible thing. I don't think it necessarily is the most impossible thing. The way that I look at my show structure is actually to do with energy. Now, I'm not going to get all spiritual on y'all here at this point, folks. But what it really is for me, it's about energy. Because at the end, how do you want them to feel? Because people remember how they feel. That's actually all we really remember. They might not that's that old thing about people don't remember what you say or what you did, but they remember how you made them feel. It's a classic thing. I can't remember what it's from, but it's from something, and it's probably true because it was written down. Everything books is true. So how do you want people to feel at the end? So at the end of my show, I want them to think that I'm kind of mad, I'm kind of out of control, I'm not under a script, I'm real, I'm frustrated, and I've got these mad skills with my head, with my brain. That's what my proviso is that's what I want them to feel at the end of the show. Like, this was high energy, I had fun, it was great, hey, yeah, and I want more. That's what I want them to feel. At the end of your show, you might want them to feel that. You might want them to feel like, whoa, like I never thought of my personal security in that way before. I'd never thought about protecting my identity. Like, oh, that's really hit me hard. Or you might want them to feel like, whoa, it's incredible what you can do with your mind. Or what is it you want them to feel? And then your last routine needs to make them feel that, not just by the trick you do, but by the energy, the pace, the content, the script, the framing, the story, everything about that needs to do that. So I close my show on my version of a deck memory routine, which involves like loads of people, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really fast and it's funny, and I get really annoyed at people, and I end up screaming in some guy's face because he apparently gets it wrong when I actually set it up in a way that he always gets it wrong every single show. So I get annoyed at him, and all this sort of stuff happens because that does all of that. It's lots of energy, and it's really credible, because at the end of the show, I want them to feel like this is credible, and this is probably real. This is probably, everything I just saw was probably real. So that's what I want them to feel. So that's why my fast-paced memory routine at the end works really, really well for me, because that's what I want them to feel. So so it's not the most impossible thing, because actually the apparent method is that I've memorized a deck of cards. That is not impossible. That's very probable. It's very, based on what you've just seen me do for the last hour or whatever, 40 minutes is probably possible for me. So it's not the most impossible thing. You're not building impossibility. That is completely pointless, I think. Everything needs to be impressive, though. Everything needs to be impressive in the show. We can't go, I'm going to do the really impressive stuff at the beginning and the really, really, really impressive stuff at the end. What's the stuff in the middle then? Oh, it's just me polishing plates. Oh, great. Why am I doing that? So it needs to all be really impressive. So yeah, for me, it's about how do you build the energy. At the beginning, I want to be fast. In the middle, I'm going to bring the energy down so everyone leans into me. And then at the end, I'm going to bring the energy right up because I want them to feel that difference. The other thing I do structurally, as well as energy, actually, any questions about the energy thing? Do I want to say anything about energy before I talk about shapes?
No, I think you've summarized that perfectly. And I think going off that instead of impossibility is going to be an eye-opener for so many people listening to this, because so many people think, oh my gosh, it's the best thing because it seems, oh my gosh, it's amazing for me. But that's where they're stuck. They're not thinking what's actually good and amazing and enjoyable and entertaining for the audience. So basing it off the energy factor, wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it is. And so the next thing that I like to do for the show is to create more variety. How do we make it feel like there's lots of variety? Because at the end of the day, what we're doing is basically getting people to think of things and telling them what they're thinking of over and over again, or sometimes predicting things or whatever, influencing stuff. How do we make it seem like more variety? And you can do that in lots of different ways. You can do that with energy. One of the things, I did a workshop 2 years ago in Brussels about stagecraft, and I showed people the different types of energy there are as a performer, which I specialized in voice for acting when I was doing my degree in performance. And one of the things we talk about a lot is the different types of energy, and two real extreme types. There's one called potency stretching, which is like the kind of thing you'd see. I can't remember his name because that's really rude. Rob Zabrecki doing, where it's very like stretched and like lurch like. And then you've got people who are like much more zen and like almost stoned looking. Like those are two very different types of energy, and you can use those two different types of energy in one show, in one trick, to make it feel like there's more variety. So how many other different ways of variety are there? Because again, variety keeps attention. So how else can we do that? One of them is with this idea that Paul Daniels taught me, which is the way that he thinks about his shows, which is to do with shapes. And that is my first routine. The shape is, it's a line that goes from me, it's a triangle. So it goes from me to the person to my far left, who's going to do the passed out deck with me, across the row of people to the person on my far right, and then it comes back to me in like a triangle. Does that make sense in everyone's minds? Yeah. Whereas so if that's the shape of the first trick, we don't want every trick to look like that. So if your next routine is something where you get 4 people up on stage and they all put their hand into a bag of different colored balls and you're going to figure out which one's got the gold ball, which is one of the routines that I do. The reason that's an interesting routine is because the shape is different. It's actually just a straight line of me standing stage left and then 4 people standing stage right next to one another. That's a different shape. And then the next routine might be 1 person in the audience, and that's a straight line from me to them. So what we want to do is make sure that the routine, even if some of your routines have the same shape, don't put the same shapes next to each other. There was one show I did where I was thinking, why is it just not playing very well, this show? And it's because I had a chair test followed by a who's got the gold ball routine. They're both the same shape. Even though it's about a totally different thing, this is about the order in which people sit, and it's about prediction. And the next routine's about me reading people and a bag and balls, and it's mind reading and that kind of thing. It's a very different skill. People are standing, not sitting, but it's the same shape. And it potentially has a similar feel energy-wise as well. So think about our shows as different. And you can do this close up as well. Like, this is not just a stage thing. And all the things I'm talking about here, by the way, absolutely apply to close up. Think about, like, don't go, oh, this doesn't work for me because I don't perform stage. No, it 100% works for you. In fact, it probably works more for you because you're doing a lot of shorter sets. So I know Aidan and Ashley, I think you both do quite a lot of close-up stuff, right? So we think about the shapes. Like, your first routine might use 3 people around the table who are all drawing little pictures, and you collect them in. Well, that's great. That's like a triangle. Then the next routine shouldn't be a triangle because that makes it more interesting. So how do you create these different shapes throughout your show, which are subconscious to you, but all the audience sees in their mind is, this was lots of variety. This was different. This was interesting.
Do you know what? I genuinely don't know what I was expecting as we walked into this discussion, but genuinely this information here is changing my outlook on all of mentalism. And I'm not just saying that because you're sat right in front of me. I genuinely think, like, the shapes, never would have considered it, but it's already making me think that, yeah, I've got a load of triangles in my show, and I don't like triangles anymore. Pythagoras theorem does not work here.
No, yeah. I don't care about your A squared or your C squared. Your hypotenuse, sort of. Yeah.
That's the best way. No, there was something that you said at the start of this call that really interested me, and it kind of why none of this matters.
Yeah, well, actually, none of what we've just talked about for the last 7 years on this podcast episode, which is how long it's been, I think. We've had, people won't know this, but during this, we've had some really interesting things happen. We've had literally a catastrophe where my cat jumped all over everything and it was mad. So luckily, the editor of the show is flipping brilliant. You didn't notice a thing, did we? Yeah. The thing is, this stuff doesn't matter really. Because the thing I said at the beginning about everybody standing up and doing something collectively together works really well for some of my friends. And I know people who only do predictions in their show. And I know people who I've got friends who are comedians who do their show standing on a chair in the middle of the audience. So they break that rule completely. So none of this matters. None of this does anything, because actually what you'll find is you'll try some of this stuff and you'll find it doesn't work. And the only reason it doesn't work is not because you're a bad performer. It's not because of anything you've done. It's just because of who you are. And all you've got to do is try more stuff, find more ways that don't work, and find the thing that really does work for you. Yes, having variety is really important, but there will be ways of having it so your show is just the same thing over and over again, and it could work with the right other considerations, because for every consideration that we've made here, there will be ways of compensating for them through something else. So there's none of this stuff which only is the way to do it. I think that's a terrible, terrible way of doing anything, because you have to find your way. You have to learn some of these tricks, some of these techniques that we've talked about, to be aware of them. When you're learning anything, when you're learning how to be a better vocal performer, you learn all the techniques, but you have to learn them so you can break the rules. But you have to learn the rules first. You have to know what the rules are to begin with. So which of these are you going to pick from? Which of them are you going to play with and go, let's see if that works tonight? And please just pick one thing at a time. Don't pick loads of them. Go, okay, tonight or today, I've got that gig and I'm going to do the shapes thing. I'm going to move that trick to there and that trick to there and just see how I feel about it, see how the energy's like. And you have to decide on, how will I know if it's working? One of the things that I teach my entrepreneur performers in a circle members when they're looking at their business and they're looking at any marketing thing is, it's great and okay to say, I'm going to try running Facebook ads. I'm going to try and do a podcast. I'm going to try and do all these different things. But I say to them, great, that's fine. You can decide, but you can't do it. I won't allow you to do it until you tell me, how will you know if it's working? Because otherwise you're throwing money, time, resources, effort, energy, love, passion. You're throwing all these resources at something without knowing what you're expecting it to look like, if it's good or if it's bad. So you have to decide, I'm going to test this one thing. And then how will I know if it's working? And sometimes it will be a number. It'll be, there was louder applause. It'll be really measurable. Sometimes it won't be measurable. It'll just be a feeling. And that's okay too. So what am I going to test? What am I going to play with? What am I going to try? What am I going to change? And how will I know if it's working?
Ken, I just want to say that is beautiful. Like, honestly, what you have shared today is absolutely incredible. And I just want to say, honestly, thank you for addressing, first of all of this, and also making it so much simpler to understand for people, so that they can just go, oh my gosh, this is so obvious to me now. Because so often we can talk to people about all of this stuff, but it's not made simple. And you've just outlined it so clearly, so detailed, and what you've been saying about how you structure your show, the things you do, is just, honestly, you've heard it from Aidan. It's changed his outlook on mentalism. But I've just been sat here just thinking, this is gold. This is gold. This is gold throughout. I think we say it, Aidan, every time we have a podcast interview, we say, this is a podcast, yeah, best podcast, yeah, this is the best podcast yet. Ken, I'm going to say it again now. This is the best podcast yet.
Yeah, Colin Cloud. This is the best one. Colin, this one.
There we go. So if people aren't interested in Colin Cloud and they're interested in you, Ken, where can they find you?
You don't need to choose. There is a lot of Colin Cloud in all of us. Hey, those are the days. So if you want to find out more about me, and if you want, actually not even about me, if you actually just want to talk more about how to be a more enterprising performer, book more of the gigs that you want to do, and get more respect from the people around you for having an actual business, and you want to figure that stuff out, if you go to Facebook and literally look for the group, it's called Enterprising Performers. It's a free Facebook group. Just join that. On the way in, I'll give you the opportunity. I'll say to you, hey, do you want to give us your email address? And you'll receive my daily emails, which I send every single day, Monday to Friday, with an inspirational story and a business tip to help you put all this stuff into practice for your business. Then you'll be able to do that as well. So yeah, go to Facebook, look for Enterprising Performers, and it'll be a pleasure to have you in there.
And there we have it. I said this at the start, and I will stick by it right now. This information has changed the way that I see mentalism for the long haul. And I'm hoping that you felt that way as well, because there's so many different tangents. And as Ken said, don't try and focus all of this at once. Just pick one thing and really play and explore with that. And don't be afraid of failure. I know we spoke about that at the start of the episode, like going out there and being willing and ready to fail and learn from those experiences. That's a real big takeaway that I just want to throw back in at the end. But honestly, I love this episode. How did you find it, Ashley?
Yeah, honestly, like, so good. Like, this is the stuff which is why people are actually going to give a damn about your performances, your shows, whatever the hell you're doing. This is the stuff which is going to get you remembered. And as a byproduct, well, this is going to get you more work. You're going to get more gigs. You're just going to be known as that better entertainer, that more entertaining entertainer. You're going to be doing your job better. You're going to be better at every single thing you do. And it starts with the basis and foundations of show structure that was discussed today. Absolutely phenomenal. And I know this episode is going to be a game changer for so many people. But this is coming to the end of today's podcast. So I just want to say a massive thank you to the amazing Ken Dyne. If you guys did enjoy this podcast, go and check out all of the incredible work that Ken is doing for magicians right now. And also, if you enjoy our podcast, you enjoy what we're doing, and you want to support us, then just scroll down at the bottom of your podcast provider, leave a little review on your honest thoughts and what you think about our podcast. And honestly, that is the best way to help us out. And it would honestly mean the absolute world to us. So with that said, thank you so much for listening to the Successful Mentalist podcast. We'll see you guys next week for another exciting and brand new episode.